All right, completing the square is our next method of solving by factoring. And completing the square is basically giving us a way to get back to using the square root method. So if we can complete the square, it's really nice because then we can come back to this nice, easy square root method. So when I'm completing the square, the first thing that I'm going to think about is actually moving this 8 over to the other side. So I'm going to start with x squared plus 6x equals 8. And notice I left myself some space here. I'm going to take this space and I'm going to fill it in by dividing my 6 by 2 and then squaring that answer. So 6 divided by 2 squared. To maintain equality, I have to keep it the same. It might look different, but it's actually the same values. I would have to add that same thing to the other side. Well, of course, 6 divided by 2 is 3. 3 squared is 9. The reason that I did this, let's think about what this means now, is that now on this left side, I have x squared plus 6x plus 9 equals 17. Well, this is a perfect square trinomial. If I want to factor this now, it's going to factor into x plus 3. Notice 6 divided by 2 was 3 times x plus 3. So if you FOILed this back out, you would get x squared plus 3x, the same number is why I divided this 6 by 2, because I needed to half this, because I needed to have it divided perfectly in half. And then, of course, the 9 comes from the 3 times 3. So that's 17. I can condense that left side. X plus 3 squared is 17. And now, quite lovely, I can take the square root of both sides. X plus 3 is the positive or negative square root of 17. Move the 3 to the other side. X is negative 3 plus or minus root 17. And that's great about using completing the square method. Let's try that again over here. This one's a bit more complicated. I've got this 2 and this 12 and the 5, and so not everything divides nicely by 2. Let's see what's going to happen. Again, I'm going to move the 5 to the other side. I'm going to leave myself space, and that's negative 5 now. This time what I'm going to do is first I'm going to factor out the 2. W squared plus 6w, again leaving space, equals negative 5. In factoring out this 2, there's 2 things I can do right now. If I was just completing the square to try to find vertex form of an equation, then I would leave the 2 here. But since we're going to solve this, I'm going to move the 2 over. And now I realize that from the beginning we actually could have divided by our 2 because we're still getting our negative 5 halves over here. All right. I've got the same setup from over here. I've got a 6 again, a 6. So divide that by 2 and square it. 6 divided by 2 is 3. 3 squared is 9. Add 9 to the other side. I really don't need these parentheses anymore. I'm going to take them out. And now when I complete that square, turn it into a perfect square. As we saw over here, it's w plus 3 squared. Negative 5 halves plus 9. Well, 9 is the same as 18 halves. So together that's 13 halves. Square root. W plus 3 is equal to the plus or minus whole square root of the whole thing, 13 over 2. As a mathematician, it makes me really twitchy to see a square root in the bottom, though. The way that I get rid of my square root in the bottom is if I multiplied top and bottom by 2, I'd have an equivalent fraction. That would be the same as plus or minus square root of 26 over 4. The reason I multiplied by 2 is I'm not always going to multiply by 2. I picked 2 because that made a perfect square in the bottom. And now I know the square root of 4 is 2. So w plus 3 is equal to the plus or minus square root of 26 over 2. And now I'm going to move that 3 to the other side. Negative 3 plus or minus square root of 26 over 2. And there is solving by completing the square.